All right, for number 17 and 18, we are still using the quadratic formula. So we first check and see is it equal to 0? Yes, it is. Then we can go ahead and label our A's, our B's, and our C's. Then I'm going to do my cross product sum puzzle. I'm going to plug it into the formula. So I've got x equals negative b, so negative 4, plus or minus the square root of b squared, so 4 squared minus 4ac, all of that being divided by 2a. Okay, so I'm going to have two answers, x equals twice. I'm going to start by writing the negative 4 here, and then in the denominator, we will have 2 times 3, which is 6. Okay, then I want to plug this whole thing in the calculator, including the square root. And when I do that, I get approximately 11.66. I'll put 11.66, and then a minus 11.66. And when I plug it in the calculator, we should be getting 1.28 and negative 2.61. Again, make sure you're plugging the top in parentheses and then dividing the whole thing by 6, or hit equals before you divide by 6 to get that correct answer. Okay, last one is number 18 for quadratic formula. This is not equal to 0, so I need to start by adding 4 to both sides. So I've got x squared minus 4x plus 4 equals 0, and I cannot combine these two because this one has an x and this one does not. So my a value here is 1, b value negative 4, c value is 4. So plugging it into my formula, I've got x equals negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac, all divided by 2a. Okay, so then I'll have two answers. I'll have an x equals and an x equals. A negative 4 is going to give me a positive 4. And then in the denominator, I will be dividing by 2 times 1, which is 2. So now in your calculator, you're plugging the whole thing in, including the square root, into your calculator. And when you do that, you get 0. So I'm adding 0 and I'm subtracting 0, which is actually going to give me the same answer of positive 2 for both of them. So x equals 2 is your final answer for number 18. All right, the next few, just like on your quiz, you're going to have a few problems where you can choose any method that you want to use to solve these problems. So it's kind of up to you. You could solve them all using the quadratic formula if you want, or some of them will be factorable and some of them will not be. So if we look at number 19 here, the first thing for all of these is that they have to be equal to 0 still. So I need to add 7 to both sides to see what we can do. So we've got x squared plus 8x plus 7 equals 0. And a few things here, since this a value is 1, I would maybe suggest trying to start factoring it and see if that works, because when a value is 1, it's pretty easy to factor. So I'm going to start my cross product sum puzzle, multiply a and c together to give me 7x squared, and I want to add to give me 8x. Now, are there numbers that I can multiply together to give me 7 and add to give me 8? The answer should be yes, 7x and 1x. Okay, so I'm going to plug that into my factors, and I get x plus 7 and x plus 1. But I need to solve, and when I solve both of these, I get x equals negative 7 and x equals negative 1. Okay, moving on, number 20. Number 20, I only have two terms. It is equal to 0. So I would start by taking out our GCF. If I divide both of these by 2, I get x squared minus 49. Okay, now this should look familiar because this is actually a difference of squares. So we can go ahead and set up this problem as what times what gives me x squared, that would be x. And then what times what gives me 49, I would have a positive 7 and a negative 7 as an option. Okay, so this is equal to 0. So I'm going to get two answers here. I'm still going to get x equals negative 7 and x equals 7, respectively, solving that for equal to 0. So those are my two answers for number 20. Number 21. I've got three terms here. we could start by trying out the quadratic formulas, or not the quadratic formula, but factoring. So I'm going to take a times c, which would give me negative 105, x to the second, and then negative 16x on the bottom. So we think to ourselves, what multiplies together to give me negative 105 and adds to give me negative 16? If you're looking at your chart, you should see that those numbers are negative 21x and 5x. So this one, since a is not equal to 1, we are going to have to replace these two values for my b term if we're doing factoring. So I would rewrite this as 3x squared minus 21x plus 5x minus 35 equals 0. And I could split this in half, find the GCF of the left side, which is 3x, and the GCF of the right side, which is 5. And that would be one of my factors. My other factor is what I get when I divide. So if I take 3x squared divided by 3x, that gives me x. And if I take negative 21x divided by 3x, that gives me minus 7. So if I solve both of these equations for x, I get x equals negative 5/3 and x equals 7. Okay, we could have also solved this using the quadratic formula, just like how we could have used the quadratic formula for number 19 as well. Okay, I chose to use factoring them. And the last one, number 22, again, it's equal to 0, so we are good there. I do not have a difference of squares here, so I cannot use that formula, but I could take out a GCF of both of these. My GCF of both of these would be 4x. When I take out 4x, I get 2x minus 5, and I have two factors here, so I'm going to set each of these equal to 0. So I've got 4x equals 0, and if I solve that, x would have to be 0, and I would also set the equation 2x minus 5 equal to 0 and get 2x equals 5, or x equals 5/2 for that final answer. Okay, we went through those quick, but if you have any questions, please come in and see me.